Now joining us here on episode number 100 of the LSR Podcast, a very, very special guest, Scott Warfield, VP of Gaming for the PGA Tour. Scott, really do appreciate you joining us here on what we consider to be a special pod. Everybody else listening probably does not, but, episode number 100, we really do appreciate you being here.
Thanks. You guys called this, what is this, the Wilt Chamberlain episode, or what you got a special name for number 100?
Yeah, what do we go with, Adam? It's the Mega Pie. I don't know what we're going with. What are we doing here?
You know what? I have no problem calling it the Wilt episode, so long as we can get you, Matt, to hold up the little 100 sign like Wilt did.
I'll edits. That's what we're doing after
all right.
This is all said and done. Scott, I want to kick things off here. I mean, you've now been in this role here fairly recently, the VP of Gaming over at the PGA Tour. What kind of went about this role getting created for you, getting this role and the PGA Tour getting so incredibly involved on the gaming side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it probably dates back to 17 and then obviously into 18 when PASPA was struck down. I obviously wasn't around for the creation of that on the tour side, but, I moved over from NASCAR where I was in a very similar role. That was brand new as of, again, 2 or 3 years ago when the Supreme Court struck down PASPA. So, I think the leagues have, started to think about how this needs to be staffed, and Tour has a lot of folks thinking about this space on a day-to-day basis, a lot of leadership, how to do it the right way. But I think ultimately they were looking for someone to come in and wake up every single day thinking about it from sun up to sundown.
So, Scott, how do you take the experience that you had with NASCAR and bring it into this role with the Tour and sort of start, maybe if not from the bottom, you do have a lot of ability to create things from scratch in a space in the U.S. that has only been around for 3 years in terms of across the entire country?
It's a good question, Adam, and I think the way the Tour thinks about this space isn't too dissimilar from the way we thought about it at NASCAR, which is, it's the legalized sports betting it's here, it's expanding across the country. It's an engagement opportunity first and foremost. Is thinking about what the current fan currently engages with. How do you increase that? How do you get a core fan to watch another 30 or 45 minutes or another 4 or 5 events throughout the year? And on top of that, how do you use this activity, legalized sports betting, to be more relevant to a younger and more diverse audience? I mean, I think everyone looks at the audience, looks at the current media landscape of the fragmentation that's happening and what can or cannot be relevant to a 25-year-old non-fan, right? Who may not have 5 hours for a football game or 4 hours for a NASCAR race or golf match, but may have 90 minutes on their phone over the final 6 holes of a tournament. So, the fact that they looked through that lens was, really intriguing when thinking about kind of the move over, because it was a very similar, way we thought about the business over at NASCAR.
Can you tell us what you've learned in this role about golf fans? You have almost a focus group here, so you can come back to us because we are golf fans, we are gamblers, we love this intersection. What have you learned about what the consumer wants and how that intersects with what the PGA Tour wants?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, because we have tried to do as much fan research as humanly possible, but also understand that it is one very important input, but it's not the only one, right? So we have a fan council that we try and pepper a lot with, and in anything we're doing in this space, because we're trying to be very cognizant of not forcing this content down the throat of people that aren't looking for it. And I say that honestly, because it's I think that's vital. I think in pockets, in other more mature markets, that might have been a misstep. I think they would raise their hand in some other territories around the globe and say we should have been a little more intentional about where this content ended up. So the only reason I bring that up is that this isn't going to be for everyone, and there are core fans of this sport, core fans of every sport, that love it for the purity of the game and don't need an additional reason to love it. So when you do things like add odds to our league website, do the BetCast program that we did in partnership with NBC and PointsBet, where there was a second screen experience behind a paywall on Peacock, the reaction is a mixed bag, right? There are fans that say, hey, not for me, don't need it. And that's important. We need to listen to that. We need to take their feedback and incorporate it every single way we can, because they're the most important stakeholder. With that said, we also need to do research on a casual or a non-fan. And did you think non-fan that the BetCast was interesting? Would it be a reason for you to watch? Because that's going to be an important input as well. So we don't have it all yet, Dustin, and we probably need to invest even more on that side of it, because everything we're going to do is going to be steeped in the research of how do our fans feel, how do our sponsors feel, how do our broadcast partners feel, and then ultimately what's right for the brand, and moving at the appropriate pace for a global company like the PGA Tour is going to be vital.
Scott, you mentioned 25-year-old fans, and we've all heard the knock on golf. It's slow. It takes a long time. People are, especially the younger generation, wants things to be happening just like this or whatever. And so with that, have you guys actually taken a step back from a gambling standpoint and said, okay, so maybe some of these knocks that people are saying about golf actually works in our favor when it comes to a gambling perspective here? I mean, I personally am of the belief that golf has the biggest to gain from legalized gambling landscape. I honestly believe of all the sports out there, because it is perfectly catered for in-game wagering. The time it takes between strokes and the time it takes between holes and things like that is actually a positive when it comes to from a gambling aspect. Maybe not from the typical everyday viewer aspect, from a gambling aspect for sure. And as we become more and more comfortable with gambling and more comfortable with in-game gambling specifically, I think golf has a lot to gain from just the way golf's played, the speed of which golf is played.
100%. And I don't know where I read this yesterday or day before. It was actually Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, was talking about a call he got from Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, where they were talking about that exact same topic, which was, hey, baseball, you've always you've gotten knocked for having a slower game. You've taken really progressive steps to try and speed up the game. Rob's statement was something like, and Adam said, you guys might want to lean into this a little bit. To me, golf and baseball, because of the amount of content and the pace of play, lend themselves absolutely perfectly to in-play betting, which is where I think we all believe this is headed here domestically, right? Certainly not to the levels it currently is in Europe and much more mature markets, where it's, depending on what you believe, 75-80% of all in-play bets, or all bets, are in play. Here, I don't know, again, depending on where the source is, 30, 40, maybe 50%, but I think we all know that's where it's trending. And if you look at the investment that the PGA Tour has made in ShotLink over the years, and now with our product with IMG Arena, with the Golf Event Center product, where ultimately you'll get to the opportunity to have a shot by shot, and you've got Jon Rahm on a par 5 in the middle of the fairway from 250 yards out, and being able to set, reset a line there of can he get it inside 10 feet. That's the end goal. This sport traditionally, from a betting perspective, has been fairly static, I'll call it, right? Set it and forget it, outright winners, maybe a head-to-head. Again, where the opportunity for the sport from a growth standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, from an engagement standpoint, is that more granular, shot-by-shot, hole-by-hole opportunity that will, get someone over to a broadcast, get someone out to an event. So I'm with you, and it's again a big reason for uprooting a family and moving to Florida. The opportunity this sport has, again, because of how much players on the course from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m, and then to your point, Matt, it has been knocked as being slow, but now it might be celebrated as being a little bit slower.
Scott, we on our podcast at times have had questions about the nature of official league data and having it codified in law across the country. But the one thing that we have been pretty, had consensus on here is that if anyone has a claim to having true proprietary data, to having data that nobody else could just watch a game on TV and figure out, it is the PGA Tour. It is ShotLink. It is the fact that it would be very difficult for anyone to replicate the data product that the PGA Tour has put time into building. Can you maybe expand a little bit on how you do leverage that, not only for fans, but for the business opportunity?
It's exactly right. It's, again, you think about the similarities in my old world and my new one. Really, really hard to squat, or whatever the term is you want to use, at a NASCAR race with cars going, 200 miles an hour, inches apart, and replicate that data product, right? Golf, for a different reason, but very similar in that would be really hard with how many golf balls are in the air at the same time for 12 hours, 4 days a week. It puts you in a position where, again, as in play progresses, that it almost becomes a necessity, right? To set appropriate lines, to the integrity component of where it's coming from. I mean, it's been an investment. I'm going out to Quail next week. I'm still here in Charlotte before we move, and with a home event here next week, and to go out and spend time with our ShotLink because that's the bread and butter of what's happening here, and having a world-class partner like IMG Arena that's developed this very unique, one-of-a-kind product. We think it's going to be a game changer longer term.
You talked about that IMG Arena product, and I know you started working with BetMGM. Like that, I demoed this product 2 years ago. I think it's amazing. If I had that product in my pocket, I would be engaging with golf and betting a lot more. When can an American maybe see this in action in a U.S. regulated state?
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys know this probably better than anyone. The difference between getting it sold in and distributed is a completely different story than getting it integrated into the operator's platform, or a Candee and SB Tech, et cetera. So 19 was a build out year. 20 we don't need to talk about. We can just watch it off the calendar. And now 21, they're back on kind of the selling. So like you said, MGM later this year, already, Bet365, they have a lot more that I probably can't get into, at least from a paper standpoint, and then the integration. So easier way to say it, Dustin, I think by the fall you'll start to see a little broader distribution of that. But it's a process, and with how fast this space is growing, how much these operators have on their plates with new states coming on, right? Every time a new state opens, it feels like it has impacts across the entire ecosystem, not just who's going where, but where priorities lie internally. So the good news is, like you, Dustin, I think everyone that sees it says, holy crap, that's amazing, and that's a game changer. Now it's just being patient and leaning on as many stakeholders in this space to say, let's give this a shot, right? It's new, it's different. I think the American consumer has been used to money line and totals, over under and spreads, and those aren't going away, and those are interesting bet types. But with a product like the IMG Arena product, it's going to change the game. It's going to take a little time.
Scott, I think that golf is in a fantastic spot right now from a player standpoint as well. I mean, so many young, awesome players. I mean, it's not like in the past where, and listen, through the heyday, I absolutely love golf still as well, but you knew pretty much every time Tiger teed it up, it was kind of going to be Tiger and maybe one other person, and that was about it that was going at it. And there's literally a couple dozen guys now every time you tee it up where they could take home a championship. And I mean, it is just such a great talent pool. What do you think that these players might play in the growth as well from a gaming side? Do you see them having a role at all? I mean, do you see them being guys that may be in commercials or have sponsorship, deals on the side and things like that? Do you think that maybe is how this, not immediately, but do you think that's where this kind of ends up down the line?
I think you're starting to see a lot of the operators, activating against all sorts of stakeholders and the players included. So, Bryson and DraftKings, mm-hmm. right, where that logo's on the side of his cap. I think there's going to be opportunities, as this grows and as golf in particular grows in this space, for tournaments, for the players, for our OMPs, to activate as they see fit, right, and as it fits their individual brand. Because
the gambling aspect has always been a part of golf. Like, you go out and play with your buddies and you're doing all that. It's just never been in the forefront. And I guess like now we're seeing it just a little bit more in the forefront. It's kind of not in the shadows at the country club with you and your buddies. It's a little bit more out in the open.
It is. And that's why, we're spending, there is a commercial opportunity here, and I don't want to downplay it because it's important, right, for all stakeholders. But we spend even more time thinking about, as I have a fly in my face, even more time, talking about the integrity of the game and our partnership with Genius Sports, who's our integrity partner, the responsible gaming initiatives that we're trying to, invest in with the American Gaming Association and the National Center for Problem Gambling. Like, those are things that are near and dear to my heart, and to our leadership, because it's, you want to do this the right way. And so those two pillars, we start every update, every meeting with a stakeholder with, here's what we're doing from an integrity standpoint. Here's what we're doing from a responsible gaming standpoint. Here are things we're considering in terms of, changes around tournaments, that to make sure that we're protecting, as best as we can. The elephant in the room is that, sports betting's this isn't new, right? It's just been happening illegally. And you guys probably have your own numbers of how large that illegal market is. It's been here. We're just engaging with it in a different way.
I'm curious, as you mentioned certain things that you might be able to do around tournaments week to week and so on. Is there anything you can, explain to us, and maybe we're trying to explain it to people day to day as to, look, here's what's going on that is intended not only with the PGA Tour, but with every major sport to safeguard the integrity of the contests, not just from, the perspective of us, talking about legalized gambling, but to be able to make sure that the contest for everybody watching on TV, whether they have a gambling interest or not, is being protected as they hear more about legal sports betting.
Yeah, probably not yet to go real deep into. What I can say is, we're looking at everything, and we're talking to every single stakeholder and getting as much input from all of them, the members, the employees, vendors. And again, going through this integrity refresh project with Genius as we speak, because it's at the core of this entire thing. It's not a talking point. It is the cornerstone of what we're trying to do here. It allows us to then, leverage this opportunity for growth of the game. But we all do, all of the leagues, all the teams, all the stakeholders, have to spend as much time as possible talking about the integrity of all of this.
And just to follow up on something that Matt and I have talked about separately, when it comes to integration into the broadcast, and you referenced it earlier, and the fact that some other markets maybe would look back on, how hard it's been pushed and say, hey, okay, we would pull back a little bit. Matt and I have also discussed that some of what we've seen not necessarily with the tour, but I was referencing with hockey broadcasts and so on, where it felt like the commentators weren't really even comfortable with the content that they were putting out there. What has the education piece been like in terms of working with the broadcast partners who might not have as much experience in terms of working with odds and the legal sports betting market?
Yeah, we don't go a week without talking about it, to be honest with you, because it's we're everyone's in the test mode right now, and that's how I would explain what we did at Waste Management this year with the betcast. Right, that was by the way, successful, but that was a test. 2.5 hours every day for 4 days, and if I'm being honest, I went in. Not to say worried, but I was wondering whether that was going to hold for 2.5 hours, whether the interest would be there, right? And how do you sustain this conversation? It goes back a little bit to Matt's question, though, about how nicely this sport sets up for that, right? Where there are natural breaks, and you can pull out and say, hey, he just hit one in the sand on the green side bunker. And you have time to talk about that, as opposed to some sports where it is so back and forth, and you feel like it might be forced or it's crowbarred in to get that. So we're trying to test. We're trying to do it at the appropriate pace, and we're trying to do it with our broadcast partners, like we did with NBC, and obviously they have a great relationship with PointsBet. So we're all sort of learning together on that content piece, and we're trying to do it again at an appropriate pace for our brand, and we know there'll be pressures to do more from all sorts of corners, and we likely will pursue those down the road. We're just going to do it at a pace that is appropriate for our partners and for our fans, and go from there.
I have two for you. First one, Bryce and DeChambeau deal with the DraftKings. I know that's not the PGA Tour's deal per se, but happens with that blessing. What have you seen? And I guess dovetails a little bit with your discussion on integrity. Yes, DraftKings is a DFS brand, but it's also sportsbook. What's been the reaction of fans with him and that partnership, if anything, if you've seen?
We haven't seen. We've been monitoring it. Not a ton of feedback on it as of yet. I think they've been, that they love that relationship. Obviously, a transcendent star that breaks them even beyond just the world of golf. And again, to me, that's when you start to see, all the stakeholders, finding new revenue streams. I think that shows the positive trend line that this sport is on from a engagement standpoint, and the growth of the game. We talked a little bit about young stars. We probably didn't mention yet how many rounds of golf were played last year, and what the role COVID had in getting people back on the golf course and clubs in their hands, and what the tail of that means for a company or a sport like the PGA Tour. It's significant. So the feedback, I think has been, mostly we've gotten through DraftKings, and they've liked the relationship.
And my other one was, we're getting a sports book at a golf course, which I think is awesome. Part of Arizona law, DraftKings deal with TPC Scottsdale. What is the over-under on number of sports books we'll see at golf courses over the next 20 years? Or is that the only one?
I don't know, Dustin, and that's the truth. What I'll say is that was a unique situation, right, where the legislation was written in a particular way, the course being a good fit, that tournament and what it represents being a perfect fit, and what the Thunderbirds have built over the years. It's not going to be, just like we say sports betting isn't going to be for everyone, and the content's not going to be for everyone, and we want to be selective about where we put it and who we put it in front of. Same thing with sports books at tournaments, right? I think there's going to be certain markets and certain events where it's an absolute no-brainer, and then there's going to be others where you say, it doesn't seem like the right brand fit. So we'll take it on a case by case and see how it develops. But it is exciting in Arizona with DraftKings. I mean, I think they're going to make that their West Coast home. It's going to be a really interesting model for us.
So the line is 1.5.
We'll set it at 1.5 for now, and we'll see how it goes from there. Scott, before we let you go, I do want to ask you, and I'm not going to ask you to think way out here because let's talk about something that maybe is actually attainable here. What is your goal as you sit here and kind of putting your feet to the fire here? But where do you want to be 3 years from now, like 36 months from now? Where do you kind of want to be with everything that's going on here, with your role in the PGA Tour and what you think that the tour should be doing and where it's heading and what will be kind of like the perfect scenario for you kind of like 3 years from now?
I'll twist it a little bit and I'll say 5 years from now, if you're all right with that. I would like to see that golf is a top 4 or 5 bet on sport in the United States. And that would be, in large part, I think from the growth of the game, the stars we have, and again, the growth of in-play betting in this IMG product. To me, if we can draw that correlation to, the amount of interest around the game, the growth of the handle, I would be able to feel like we're starting to, again, have a more engaged fan base. And we're attracting new audiences, which is just a passion of mine. And whether I was running social media at NASCAR or in esports at NASCAR or now doing the sports betting side, there's not a ton of new doors for new fans to enter, right? In the year 2021, it's probably those are 3 of them that come to my mind: is social media, esports, and sports betting. With the amount of choices they have at their disposal these days, I would like to believe that this is a fun and different way for a casual fan to come and touch the sport, see it, feel it, and ultimately become a core fan about and love it the way I think probably the four of us do. The barrier to entry to some of these sports, right, and getting out to an event or sitting down and committing to an entire broadcast sometimes can be high to certain people. This may be a new way in. And so when you say, what does this look like 5 years from now? I sort of take off the sports betting hat and I just say, hey, we've got a game that's continuing to grow and ratings are up and new people are experimenting with the sport. That to me is the win.
He is Scott Warfield, VP of Gaming over at the PGA Tour. Scott, really, really do appreciate you giving us as much time as you had. Dustin was not just blowing smoke. We are all huge golf fans here. I'm a huge golf bettor as well, so I am very, very, very excited about everything we talked about here and looking forward to growing this, with you guys, because this is just something that is, again, I'm super excited about personally. I think that the sport itself lends so great for everything that we have kind of going on in this industry. So looking forward to touching base with you here as many times as you want to come on the pod.
I appreciate you having me, and I want to get you guys down to Sawgrass. We'll do a little 2-on-2 game of hammer at the stadium course.
You don't want anything to do with me. I can promise you that. You want these other guys. You don't want me. That's going to be bad news, my friend. I can tell you that. I'll meet you at the bar afterwards, though. We can have a good time there.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, gents.